Hi, everybody. I'm here. I'm here, Kirok. If you didn't see me because I hadn't started yet, but I'm here now and I have started. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. Glad you could join me. Uh, as usual, I see a member message from Oasis right in the front that I did catch before I switched over to the Patreon and member questions. Oasis says 20 days till Strange New World season 2. Who's ready? I am super ready. I'm really looking forward to it. Anyway, so I will be answering patron and member questions first of all, as usual. So if you have something for me in the live chat, especially if you were planning on being generous and throwing in a super chat or something, please hang on to it if at all possible until I get through the patron and member questions and I can spend my full time and pay all of my attention to the live chat. So welcome once again. Thank you for joining me. Hi to everybody in the chat. And let's Kane20C says Steve is in a disco shirt. What's next? I like Discovery. I have a disco shirt because I am a fan of the show. I don't actually have a Voyager shirt. It's not that I mean, I don't hate Voyager. It's just, it wouldn't be my first choice. But no, I have a disco shirt because I like Discovery for all of its bumps and flaws. It's, it's never been perfect, but I like it quite a bit. So there you go. Hence the shirt. Anyway, now, this time for real, I'm going to the patron questions, the patron and member questions. And the first one is from Oasis, who is in the chat. Oasis says, I know that DS9 is your particular cup of tea, and I will say that as I've gotten older, I appreciate it more now than I did growing up. But have you ever discussed your favorite episode of TNG? Mine is All Good Things. It was so deep and impactful that as an 8-year-old kid, I drew my own comic adaptation of it. It wasn't perfect, but I hit a lot of the main points. Sadly, I don't have the comic anymore. Frowny face. Cheers. Well, that's really cool that you drew a comic adaptation of it, and I'm sorry that it has been lost to the years, as so many things are. Yeah, no, I mentioned in my second batch of the retro reviews that I do, the retro Star Trek reviews that I put up on Thursdays now. The first batch was the first episodes of the first 6 shows. I'm reviewing all of the basically all of the Roddenberry through the Berman era shows. So TOS, TAS, TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and Enterprise. And the first batch was the first episodes of all of those. And then the second batch was my personal favorites out of all of those. And I reviewed my personal favorite episode of Star Trek TNG, which was Chain of Command, the 2-parter starring, guest starring Ronnie Cox as Captain Jellicoe and David Warner as Gul Madred. So that's my favorite TNG episode. Although I will say, it's not really like a typical TNG episode. Like, it's a little, especially the Picard Madred stuff, it's a little heavier than TNG often got. And it's off model for other reasons too. I mean, Picard is not on the Enterprise. Captain Jellicoe is in that spot. Like, it's a very different episode than a lot of TNG episodes are. So for a more typical TNG episode, if I was going to pick my favorite, I mean, I also really love Tapestry, the Q episode, the sort of It's a Wonderful Life Q episode. I like a lot of the Q episodes, actually. Most of the Q episodes in TNG are terrific. Q Who, which is also the first Borg episode, is a big favorite of mine. I also love The Measure of a Man. I also have always had a huge soft spot for Casino Royale. I love that. I love Hollow Pursuits, the first Barclay episode. I mean, I love TNG. There's a lot of TNG episodes that I just absolutely adore. So if I was going to start listing all my favorite TNG episodes, we would be here for a while. And All Good Things as well. All Good Things is still by far the best last episode a Star Trek show has ever had. I mean, it's just phenomenal. It works on every level. It's everything you would hope a final episode of Star Trek: The Next Generation would be. It's fantastic. Akos Barati, do you think that fictional depiction of Eastern Europeans in recent shows and movies as pimps, whores, and drug dealers are a slight repackaging of tropes used previously on African American characters? Interesting. Maybe it is entirely possible that there has been a conscious effort to, if it is felt that such a character is necessary in a story, to make that character into a white person and maybe an Eastern European person instead of a black person, when typically that would be a role that would have been given to a black character and they would have been treated stereotypically. Maybe, I mean, maybe it's a result of trying to not just have more positive representation of people of color, but also less negative representation, and have uh, characters of ethnicities other than African American or other than dark skinned people be representing the less savory, or who, what are thought of as the less savory. There's nothing necessarily unsavory about being a sex worker, but that are often depicted in unsavory ways. Uh, it's entirely possible. I don't know for sure, obviously, and I'm not aware of any conscious effort that has ever been talked about as far as that. But it sounds plausible, you know. Ah, not a collaborator. So this may be a contentious take, but so be it. In your Hugh review, you said one of the victims of authoritarianism are the people themselves, and seemingly likened that to China or Russia. I vehemently disagree. To me, anyone, in civilians included, should rise up against tyranny. Just like the Cardis did in DS9, anyone willing to abide by the authoritarian status quo is a collaborator, their inaction and lack of protest giving credence and support to the regime. People can and have risen up in decades past, but now they seem complacent to accept their lives. Any Russian who eats stolen Ukrainian food or any Chinese who profits off of Hong Kong is just as guilty as the soldiers and or politicians who stole in the first place. I think that might be a little harsh. It's not that I don't agree with you that totalitarianism can and should be fought from the inside, and that people who are able to should fight back against an authoritarian regime if they are living under it. But you use the example, I noticed the fictional example of the Cardassians in Deep Space Nine. Even the Cardassians didn't really rise up until almost the very end of the show. Like, we see way more examples of Cardassians living under that fascist regime and supporting it, or at least tolerating it, and in some cases even making excuses for it, or trying to put the best possible light on it, than we do Cardassians protesting it or working against it. And look, yeah, of course, people in China, people in Russia, people in Iran, Saudi Arabia, other totalitarian or authoritarian states that have the means and the courage to stand up against those governments and to protest and to work against them and to resist. I mean, more power to all of those people. Those people who do that are heroes, and it takes a lot of guts to do that. And they should be supported as much as we can support them from the outside, and they should be celebrated. But it's not always that easy. I mean, so my point was, and I wasn't actually specifically thinking of China or Russia. I was thinking of historical examples like the Soviet Union or Nazi Germany. But of course, I mean, there are contemporary examples as well. I just didn't have any of them in my head when I made that statement. But there are a lot of people in Iran, there are a lot of people in Saudi Arabia who I'm sure would love to not have such a heavy boot on their necks, who I'm sure would love to have a more democratic, open government and society. But it's not as easy as saying, well, they should just rise up and protest. Like, what if you are an LGBTQ person in Iran or Saudi Arabia and you fear that you'll be arrested and perhaps even executed if it's found out by the government that you're gay or trans or of some other queer identity, And same thing in Russia. I mean, I am not under the impression that queer people are all that comfortable in living out in the open in Russia either. Russia is a very homophobic culture at the moment, unfortunately. and that is encouraged by the government and by the legal system. So, you know, it's not always easy. It's not always easy. It's very easy for someone else. It's very easy for you to tell someone else that they should be fighting a revolution that you're not going to be a part of. You know, like it's the easiest thing in the world to say to other people, "Oh, you guys, you should just rise up." You know, if you're living under an authoritarian dictatorship and you don't like it and you think it, I mean, you should just rise up and get rid of it. Oh, okay. Well, let's just get about that. Then, like, it's really easy to say that. And it's not that I don't think it would be great if that did happen, but I'm not prepared to say that every person living under an authoritarian government who doesn't fight back against it with all of their might is automatically a bad person or a collaborator or you know, deserves whatever suffering they may have. Like I think that's taking things a little too far. So no, I stand by what I said, that the first victims of totalitarianism are the people who are forced to live under it. Um, yeah, I see no reason to retract that statement. So, next question is from Danny K, who says, "Hey Steve, what is your favorite article of clothing that you own? Could be a shirt, hat, coat, pair of socks, whatever it may be. Thanks. Hope all is well." I mean, I guess it would be my hat because it's the only article of clothing that I wear every day. I guess it would be my hat. Although, I mean, I also, I like some of my Star Trek shirts. I have a shirt that I had made actually a few years ago that is an MST3K reference. I've worn it on the stream a couple of times. Um, it says, so there's just a sign that says Star Wars, and it's a lift from Laser Blast, which is one of my favorite movies. In one of the movie in one of my favorite episodes of Mystery Science Theater, where of the guy with the alien gun on his hand has hitched a ride in a van, and they're driving down the road, and by the side of the road is a sign that just says Star Wars. Like that's all it says. It doesn't say, you know, playing at a theater near you. It doesn't have any dates or times or locations or anything. It's not a poster. It's just the words Star Wars on a sign. And as they're driving past it, Mike says, "There's just a sign that says Star Wars." So I had that made into a shirt, and I really like that shirt. So maybe that, but probably my hat, I would say. Probably my hat. Whichever hat I am currently wearing, like the hat that is currently in office, because this has been like my main hat for the last several years. When I retire this one and phase in a new one, then the new one will be my favorite. That's the way it works. Dana, who alas can't stay because she has to go sit outside in the blazing evening heat. And for those of you who don't know, and perhaps Dana has explained it already in the live chat, but tonight is graduation at the high school where Dana teaches, and Dana has to go be a part of graduation. So she will not be able to be with us for the entire show, but I just peeked at the chat and I see that she is here with us now. So hi, Dana. Anyway, Dana's question. "Hi, Steve. Your current angle on your Star Trek Retro review series is the most significant Borg episodes." Excuse me. "How did you decide what elements made an episode significant? Are there any episodes that you were not sure about, but decided to put in anyway because they were significant? Which ones? Why were they lower in significance to the others? And why did they make the cut anyway?" With the Borg episodes, it was actually fairly easy to choose which ones I thought were significant and which ones weren't. There aren't that many of them in TNG. In fact, I think of the Borg episodes in TNG, the only one I am not reviewing this time, I will get back to it eventually, probably next year, if I hold to my current schedule of these retro reviews. But the only one that I didn't review in this ongoing batch is Descent, which is the cliffhanger that bridges seasons 6 and 7. And that didn't make the cut just because, I mean, I wanted to have, I didn't want this batch of Borg episodes to run on for too long. I didn't want to do too many of them in a row because I wanted to move on to another subject. So I knew I wanted to leave some out. And if you're going to leave out a Borg episode from TNG, Descent is probably the one you're going to leave out because it's not a super good episode. It's not a terribly memorable episode. The Borg are in it, but the Borg aren't actually really all that important to it. It winds up being more of a data and lore episode than a Borg episode. Um, and, you know, the other Borg episodes are Q Who, which is the first appearance of the Borg. So that's significant because it's their debut. And also it's a great episode. Then after that is the Best of Both Worlds two-parter, where Captain Picard gets abducted and assimilated and turned into Locutus. And that's, you know, maybe the most important episode that TNG ever produced. And also, again, a really good episode, and the Borg episode that everybody thinks about and talks about and everybody remembers. Like, it's a high watermark of the entire franchise, let alone that show. So that's got to be in there. And then after that, the next one for TNG is I, Borg, which is the episode where we meet Hugh, the Borg, who becomes separated from the collective and recovers his individuality. And again, great episode and a really memorable episode that people still talk about and think about all these years later. And as for Voyager, the Voyager episodes I'm reviewing are Scorpion, which is not only the first time, it's not the first appearance of the Borg in Voyager, but it's the first time that the actual full Borg collective is featured, where the crew of the Starship Voyager actually faces the Borg collective directly. So it's important for that reason. And it's also the introduction of Seven of Nine, who goes on to become a really important character in the show. And then next week, I'm reviewing another two-part Borg episode from Voyager, which is Unimatrix Zero, which is the two-parter that bridges Voyager's 6th and 7th season. And it's important because it comes up with a somewhat original twist on the Borg. It comes up with a new way of looking at the Borg and kind of building them out and giving them a new angle, which is that there are some Borg drones who have created like a virtual reality space for themselves. So when they go into their regeneration cycle, they can meet in this shared virtual reality where they are individuals once again. You know, it's almost like they have this shared dream that they all go to. And in the dream, they are themselves once again. They're not just drones serving the collective. They are people again. And that's an interesting angle. So I'm reviewing that one for that reason. And then after that, I'm not sure if I'm reviewing another. I'll have to look at my notes. I don't know if I'm reviewing another Borg episode in Voyager after that or not. But then the last one of the batch is going to be the one and only Borg episode of Star Trek Enterprise, which is the only Borg episode they did, and is also a really good episode. It's one of the best episodes Enterprise ever did. So it goes in for that reason. So the ones I left out are ones that are just, in my judgment, lesser episodes in terms of quality and just have fewer significant events or of lesser lasting significance to their shows, you know. And honestly, that's most of the Borg centric episodes in Voyager. Voyager reused the Borg so many times, you know, and a lot of the Borg appearances in Voyager are just not that important or not that memorable. So for the first batch, it was the ones that are great episodes that are memorable and that have like significant milestones for the way the Borg have been used and have evolved in their various Star Trek appearances. David Colby, Steve's nemesis, was there ever an abortion metaphor more botched than Up the Long Ladder? Like, first, abortion's an issue due to bodily autonomy. You're not allowed to force anyone else to make decisions about their life and body, even to save someone else's life. We can't take blood from you without your permission. We can't take organs. We can't make you have a child. But the thing is, Riker and Pulaski's clones aren't bodily dependent on them at all. They're completely independent, supported by technological means, meant for an entirely different culture. Beyond their genetic code, they are completely different people. And as Odo says, killing your own clone is still murder. Then the episode ends with them forcing the clone women to marry the "it's not racist if you do it to white people" Irish stereotypes, which is, far from a metaphor about bodily autonomy, literally violating bodily autonomy. Those women are going to be carrying actual babies to term. Can you think of a more botched metaphor? No. And I think part of the problem with it, and I don't know a whole lot about what went into the writing of that episode or what the intentions were as far as allegory, but I'm not sure if the writers of that episode were even thinking about abortion or looking at the story as if it could be interpreted in those terms. Because yeah, if you look at it in terms of bodily autonomy, it is pretty contradictory, where apparently the bodily autonomy of Riker and Pulaski is considered to be so sacrosanct that they feel entitled to execute their own clones in the gestation tube because they're from genetic material that was taken from their bodies without permission. But then their solution to the genetic crisis that the clones are dealing with is, well, let's just have them marry the Irish people, and then it'll all work out. And it's not quite by force. Like it's not like they march them in at gunpoint and say, okay, get married and have babies now. But it's presented as you pretty much have to do this or your society is going to die. You know, it's there's a little bit of pressure there. So, you know, yeah, I agree with you. It is a very inconsistent message. And if you look at it in terms of an abortion metaphor, it is pretty botched, but I am not sure. And I could be wrong. And if I'm mistaken about this and you do know, or somebody else knows that this was intended to be some sort of message about abortion, please do let me know in the chat later on when I'm paying attention to it. But as far as I know, this was not intended as any kind of abortion allegory or to have any sort of message relating to abortion at all. It just sort of worked out that if you interpret it that way, it has this incredibly mixed message. So yeah, if we do look at it as an abortion metaphor, it's pretty botched, I would agree. Jason M, the M is for misanthrope. Good to know. Hey, Steve, I chose that misanthrope title from watching your video on the legislation highlighted this week on anti-trans bills. Great video, by the way. I later watched from the philosophers over on Wisecrack channel this video, which is linked at the end, in which bills for loosing child labor is becoming a thing. I guess it's Make America Great like in the 19th century. Thumbs up, love, nostalgic times of that beautiful age. Sigh sarcastically. If you have heard anything about it, what are your thoughts? If not, the video is quite informative and ties into well the themes of your video. Both make me want to collectively push all conservatives that support this off a cliff into the fires of Mount Doom. But anyway, hope you have a better weekend. I know I'm planning to. And I didn't watch that video, by the way, so I can't speak to that specifically. But yeah, I mean, there's a big push in the Republican Party, and it has been this way for the last 40, 50 years at least, toward deregulation. And deregulation means pretty much deregulate all industries, let companies do whatever they want, including child labor. And more recently, they've tried to frame it as, you know, well, if somebody, you know, if a child wants to go out and try to earn a living, why should the government be in the way? Like if the child's parents decide that it's, you know, that they should be able to go out and work and earn a living and have a job, well, why should the government have anything to do with that? Why they try to frame it in a positive way, as though there's no chance that child labor would ever be exploited or that child workers would ever be treated poorly, right? So, you know, and which is, of course, the very reason why we have child labor laws in the first place, because that's exactly what happened 120, 130 years ago when child labor was the norm in this country. Children were treated awfully. They were maimed and often sometimes killed in horrible industrial accidents and working factory jobs. They basically had no childhood to speak of. They were just little workers from the first chance, the first time that they were physically able to, and it was horrid. And so we decided not to do that anymore and to make that illegal and to stop companies from hiring children and exploiting them because we had to make it illegal and threaten to throw them in prison if they did it, because that's the only way they would stop doing it. So that's why those regulations exist. And if you take those regulations away, they'll probably start doing it again because they don't give a fuck. Because all they care about is maximizing value to shareholders. Like that's it, which they're also legally mandated to do. Maybe we should repeal that law. So yeah, but it's hand in hand with the Republican philosophy of, keep the government out of everybody's business except what they do in the bedroom and things that have to do with their identity and their sexuality and their gender. That seems to be their MO. Deregulate everything except hyper-regulate people's sex lives and people's gender identity and sexuality. Jess, hi, Steve. You are an amazing ally to the LGBT community, specifically the trans community, and I want to thank you for speaking up for a group that receives hate in so many spaces. I have a few trans folks in my life and love them very much. Anyway, no question, just a big thank you. No need to even mention it in a video if you choose not to. I just want you to know you are appreciated. Well, I appreciate you saying that. Thank you very much. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad that you see me that way, and that I know I have some trans friends who have said kind things about me in the past. So I hope I continue to live up to that. I mean, that's really all I can say. But thank you very much. I really, really appreciate it. And I appreciate you being a supporter. Eric Beyer, you did a great review of the first half of season 1 of The New Quantum Leap, and I was wondering if you considered doing one for the rest of the season. I rather enjoyed the season as a whole and thought the ending was well done. What did you think? I haven't really thought about making another video. I mostly enjoyed the second half of the season. I will say it settled into being a pretty okay show. There were no episodes in the back half that I thought even approached being as good as that Halloween episode that I thought was really, really good. They did do an episode about a trans girl on her high school basketball team who kind of had to fight for her right to play. And I thought that was obviously very pertinent and very important for its political message. And just the fact that they even did I like that they did an overtly political episode, because the old Quantum Leap used to do those a lot. And I just appreciate it anytime any show does that and just puts a progressive message right out there in front so everybody can see it and is proud to show it and to lead with it. I think that's great. I wish it happened a lot more often and a lot more shows. And it's great that the new Quantum Leap did that, because the old Quantum Leap did that. And it's a very important part of that show's legacy to continue to do that. So I like that. It wasn't the strongest episode dramatically, but in terms of its message and just the intention behind it and what it represents, I thought it was wonderful. And I was very happy to see it. But other than that, there really aren't that many episodes in the latter half of the season that are all that memorable. I mean, nothing jumps out at me as being super bad, but it just kind of settled into being, okay, it's pretty good. It's pretty good. The present day subplot, I think, got a little better once there were some revelations about that. I kind of thought the ending was a little goofy, to be honest. Like, I didn't think it was poorly done, but it just got a little goofy. So, and not goofy in like a good way, goofy in a like, this is pretty goofy. But overall, I thought it was fine. And I'm glad that they got a second season, and I'm looking forward to seeing where it goes in season 2. And hopefully they're given enough creative space to continue to evolve the show and continue to try and find this show's voice. Because except for that Halloween show, I don't think they quite have it yet, but they're close. So I'm looking forward to seeing what else the show has in store, but I wasn't planning on doing another video about it at this time. But, maybe I'll change my mind. Maybe I'll think of an angle for another video on it, and I'll make one at some point. Howie Modell, Star Trek Picard Season 3. How did they run the Enterprise D with only the bridge crew? Did Geordi hyper-automate the ship the same way Scotty did in Star Trek 3? Boy, that is so far down on my list of problems with that show. I don't even know. Let's say, yeah, he hyper automated it. I mean, that raises other questions, like if you can automate a starship that size to run with only 7 people aboard, why don't they just do that? Like, why do there need to be 1,000 people on the ship if you can run it perfectly fine? And even like fight and defeat the Borg if you only have half a dozen people on it? Like, why not just, you know what I mean? It raises other questions. But like I said, that show, especially those last 2 episodes, have so much wrong with them in terms of all kinds of stuff, that the problem of, hey, wait a minute, how did they operate the Enterprise all by themselves? Like, that I agree, that's an issue. But like, if the show were better, I would be perfectly happy just being, you know what, just go with it. Like that, hey, Geordi figured something out. Okay, he's a genius, whatever. You know, if it had been a good show otherwise, I don't think that would have mattered at all. And honestly, it was such a bad show that I didn't notice it either. So it's kind of I guess it's kind of in the sweet spot of problems where it's like, if the show was good, you wouldn't care. You wouldn't notice because the show was good. If the show was bad, you wouldn't notice because there's so much worse to worry about that you don't even get that far. So, you know, yeah, sure. He Star Trek 3'd it. There you go. Black Cover 95. A few weeks ago, I was watching a live stream. A viewer said, speaking of Trump, Deep South supporters of him were asked, if he told you to get the vaccine, would you? And the guy's response was, why would I? He's a liberal New Yorker. He was the only good choice of the 2 options. The streamer laughed and said that Trump supporters support him to the extent that they'll believe he'll get them what they want. This made me think I voted Biden because I believed he'll get me what I want. I don't think he's good per se. He might be a pervert, and when he talks about the issues, he's clearly pandering and virtue signaling. But I'm okay with it for as long as he can get the job done. Closely enough to the way I want it anyway. Am I analogously a Trump supporter? Another commenter supposed me a permutation of the horseshoe effect. If you take Trump supporters at their word that that's why they voted for Trump, which I'm not sure if that's really the case. I don't know how many Trump supporters there are. I mean, because here's the thing. If they only voted for him because they just didn't want to vote for Hillary Clinton, do they still consider themselves Trump supporters? And if so, why? You know, because the election's over and he was what he was as president. So do they still consider themselves Trump supporters? You can't really use the excuse of, well, he was better than Hillary. Okay, but we're way past that, dude. Like, even if I accept that, which that's also horseshit, we're way past that. Like, we have 4 years of Trump as president to consider when we're deciding whether or not we're going to support him, you know? So I'm not sure how much credence I would give someone who says, oh, I only voted for Trump because he wasn't Hillary. I mean, I don't think that's a respectable decision anyway, but nevertheless. No, look, I have lots of problems with Biden too. I think Biden is too much of a centrist. I think Biden has not been progressive enough as president. And I realize his hands have been tied to a great extent because, you know, Republicans control half of Congress and there's only so much he can actually get done as president. Like, I don't really blame him personally for the lack of progress during his term because he hasn't had, I mean, the president is not an emperor. He has a, you know, a legislature to deal with. And if half the legislature is controlled by a quasi-fascist party, you know, it's not really Biden's fault if he's not getting a whole lot done. And the other chamber of Congress that the Democrats do control, they control by that much, which also limits what they can get done. So like, I don't necessarily blame Biden himself for lack of progress, but at the same time, there are certain things that he is responsible for that I am a little pissed off at him about, like the immigration policy. The president does have a great deal of latitude in setting immigration policy, and I don't think Biden's immigration policies have been very good. And he's had, 3 years or 2 years at this point, going on 3 years, to set a more humane, reasonable, welcoming immigration policy and refugee policy for this country. And I personally, while it could definitely be worse, I personally wish it were a lot better and think it should be a lot better. So, I don't think there's necessarily anything wrong. What I'm trying to say is there's nothing wrong with being pragmatic, and there's nothing wrong with saying, look, Biden was not my guy. Biden is not my ideal president, but as long as I think he is moving things in the right direction, I will support him. And if he runs again and I think he will continue moving things in the right direction to suit me, then I'll vote for him again. I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think that's just being pragmatic. I mean, Christ, you don't vote for someone because you've fallen in love with their soul. You don't vote for someone because you think like, they're the most wonderful person who ever walked the earth. You're not marrying them, You're voting for them for a public office. So you vote for them because you think they will do what you think is right. Like, I don't think there's anything wrong with that. And I certainly don't think it makes you analogous to a Trump supporter. The Thinking Cat, aka Night of Jaffa Cakes. Will you ever do a show or series about sci-fi villains who really need more stories, like Harry Mudd or Ardra from Devil's Due, or Cash from Captain's Holiday? I guess Vosh, you mean Vosh from Captain's Holiday, and not just in Star Trek. I always wish there was some follow-up in Doctor Who with the meddling monk, or the Ronnie. Even in Batman, there's so many of the Silver Age Batman TV show villains like King Tut, Falseface, the Mad Hatter, or more Julie Newmar type Fabulous Catwoman. Really, I find it kind of frustrating, especially in DC, that all the movies have the modern age interpretations of Batman villains when there's also so many goofy, fun, pure pre-1990s rogues. Also, Star Wars. I wish there was just a show about the non-Mandalorian bounty hunters like Bosk or IG-99. A real ground-level show where you get a view of the period between the end of the Clone Wars and the slow changes that lead to a fascist government takeover. Yeah, in certain ways. Like, honestly, the Star Trek examples you give about Harry Mudd or Ardra, like, I know that Jason Harding, one of his dream Star Trek shows would be a Harry Mudd series, and if done the way he would do it, I would be interested in that. But on the whole, like, I don't know, do I need to see Ardra again? Like, I feel like Ardra got her episode, and Ardra was great for her episode, but do we need another Ardra episode? I don't think so. I don't feel like there's a lack of closure for that character, and same thing with, the other, I never watched Doctor Who, so I can't speak to that. Do we need to see Vosh again? Like, is there some reason why we need to see her again? I don't know. But as far as like comic book movies, I definitely agree with you there. Especially in terms of how many villains are terrific and have so much potential, and we have never seen them in live action. Like, think about how many Superman movies we have seen, how many live action Superman movies we've seen. We've never gotten a live action Brainiac. We've never gotten a proper live action Doomsday. They kind of did like a half-assed Doomsday in Batman v Superman, but not like a proper Doomsday who is like he is depicted in the comics. We've never gotten like, I mean, we've gotten Metallo in live action TV shows. We've never gotten Metallo in a live action movie. We've never gotten Mr. Mxyzptlk in a movie. There's so many great Superman villains that have never been depicted in live action film. And how many Lexes have there been? Christ, there have been 2 live action General Zod's, and nothing against General Zod, especially the Terrence Stamp version from Superman and Superman 2. Like, he's great. I love General Zod, but how come we've gotten 2 live action General Zod's? We've never gotten a live action Brainiac, or we've never gotten a live action Metallo, or we've never gotten a live action Mr. Mix. Like, it just, and with Batman, same thing. I mean, think of all the great Batman rogues that we've never seen in live action, Clayface or the Mad Hatter or King Snake. Remember King Snake from the 90s and the 80s too, but yeah, King Snake was cool. You know, like there are endless rogues from Batman that could be really strong adversaries in live action movies that we've just never gotten, because they always, when it's like they make a few movies and then they reboot it and start over and they just keep doing variations on the same few villains. So I would be all in favor of seeing a wider array of classic comic book villains for Spider-Man as well, saying that because Spider-Man has a great rogues gallery that we've seen very little of, despite having so many live action Spider-Man movies by this point. It is some random geek again. Update on the Naz, the Nico, and Linequins move situation. And Steve, Naz is pronounced with a long A. Oh, so Naze? Naze the Nico? That don't make no sense, but I'll take your word for it. Naze. Naze the Nico, FYI. They are only about 900 to 1,100 away from getting their move funded. That's great. They need the money before June 29th. PayPal, 27count@gmail.com, and Cash App, $Linequin for those who have the means to help. Proceeds to post links in the chat. So yes, the links will be in the live chat momentarily if they're not there already. And if you can possibly help out, please do. We will encourage you to. And those links are also in charity links. Charitylinks.page, everybody. Nays and LQ need this move to go through because there is no plan B. Plan B will be homelessness. And even liberal cities are terrible to unhoused folks. And while that is happening, Phoenix needs all the help to pay their bills and pay for food and supplies. The end of the month is the worst for Joanna Roberts. She put up a new begging bowl. She was starving and had no food earlier this week. I just said, fuck it, and overcharged my credit card by $200 this week. It seems I have less and less money to give to my friends in need, or their needs are growing. How much is too much to overcharge my credit card? I mean, that's a question you need to ask yourself. You know, your finances are your finances. You need to decide how much is too much to overcharge your credit card. And also don't forget, like, I know this is difficult for you, and it speaks to your character and to what an empathetic and good person you are, but it's okay to say no. It's okay to acknowledge that you are tapped out, that your resources have been expended. And even though you might want to give Joanna, some extra money or give Phoenix some extra money or whatever, and they certainly need it and could use it. If you don't have it, you don't have it, and it's not your responsibility. You are obviously a good friend and a very giving, concerned person, and you're doing everything you can for them, but it doesn't make you a bad person if you decide to, say, hey, I've given everything I can give at this point, and I need to, try to pay off some of these credit card debts for a little while before I give any more, and I'm not telling you to do that. It's your decision and it's your money, and you decide how you spend it, whatever. And I think it's wonderful that you are choosing to, help your friends out like this. And of course, to encourage others to do that too. And I hope other people do, but it's not a sin to take care of yourself, especially in situations like this. So just, don't overextend yourself, or at least don't overextend yourself even more than you already have. Steve. Hi, Steve. In your opinion, who is the better Voyager secondary character, Kes or 7 of 9? And why do you think Kes got a raw deal? I think the answers to both questions are related. I think 7 of 9 is the better secondary character because once she joined the show, the writers paid a lot of attention to her and gave her a lot of time and gave her a lot of episodes to shine and gave Jerry Ryan a lot of chances to shine. And the reason why Kes got a raw deal is that they didn't really do that for her. She got some development, and there were some nice, there was some nice Kes centered material in the first few seasons of the show. And actually among that cast of incredibly bland, vaguely drawn characters, Kes does stand out And Jennifer Lien does stand out slightly more than the others. She's not quite as strong as the Doctor, who I think is the strongest character before Seven gets there, but she's, she's a little easier to get a handle on than, say, Harry, or Chakotay. So, it's not that she's completely wasted, but they don't give Kes the kind of attention that they give Seven after Seven gets there. And if they had, perhaps it would have been a different story. But no, Seven is the better character, and she should be, because the writers made much more of an effort with her than they ever did with Kes. Agent Meister, who always makes sure that his enemies can crawl before they can walk. Peldor Joy Steve, I've heard a lot of praise for the Lego Batman movie. I've never seen it myself, but I'm aware that it's gotten rave reviews and has been lauded for being a heartfelt love letter to the character and his world. Batman has been very important to me since I was 8, and I'm wondering if I should give this movie a watch. I remember sitting down to watch the original Lego movie, rubbing my hands in anticipation, giving the general acclaim it received. I thought it was awful, just awful. I turned it off after 20 minutes, resigned to the fact that whatever appeal it had went completely over my head. You and I have similar tastes when it comes to TV and movies, as well as what we consider a well-written piece of fiction should be. I'd love to hear your thoughts on the Lego Batman movie and if I should bother with it. Also, would you consider wearing your cap back to front, or hats from other cultures like a sombrero or a fez, or one of the conical hats that are de rigueur in East Asia? I like the Lego Batman movie a lot. So if you're going from my recommendation, I recommend it. Now, I will give you this caveat. I have not actually seen the Lego movie. So I don't know if I think that's any good or not. So if you say you didn't like the Lego movie and you turned it off after 20 minutes, I would imagine that the Batman Lego movie is somewhat similar in terms of tone and comedic style to the Lego movie, because it is a spinoff of it, but I don't know, because I haven't actually seen the original Lego movie, so I can't advise you on that. But having just seen the Lego Batman movie, I enjoyed it quite a bit. So, if you're going from my recommendation, I recommend it. And if you don't like it, I'm sorry that you watched it because I told you to, but I thought it was good. Okay, so I would never wear my cap back to front, because only catchers are allowed to do that when they're actually in the game and catching and they have the mask on, right? To do otherwise, to wear your baseball cap backwards for any other reason is a sacrilege and an unforgivable sin. Unless you're an actor playing a role, like if I was doing a character and my character wore his ball cap backwards, then that's permissible because you're just an actor playing a character. But if you are yourself out in the real world being you and you wear your baseball cap backwards, I feel that you have forsaken God's love, and you will spend eternity burning in the lake of non-consuming fire. I'm sorry. And I'm an atheist, and I genuinely believe that. Hats from other cultures would be silly and also appropriative, and I just don't think so. I wouldn't wear a sombrero. I wouldn't wear a fez. I wouldn't wear, as you say, the conical hats in East Asia. It's unfathomable to me that I would ever wear a hat like other than just a straight traditional baseball cap. I don't think that would ever happen. That sort of thing doesn't suit me. It would be goofy and silly and out of character for me and beneath my personal dignity. And it's just not something that I would ever expect to happen. And if you're watching this, hoping that you're going to see me, wear like a hat other than a ball cap, I just wouldn't wait on that ever happening, because I don't think it ever will. So I'm sorry to disappoint you. Next question is from Kier, bringing the why. There's gaping omissions in recent Star Trek series. Enterprise and TOS got Strange New Worlds. Voyager got Prodigy. TNG spun off to Picard with a flush, the poker kind. Where's the DS9 spinoff? The Picard spinoff doesn't count. I personally like the idea of Jake becoming so pissed at the Prophets kidnapping his dad that he becomes a paw wraith, he steals Bajaran industrial replicators and starts churning out so many orbs they outnumber Lego. He then hands them out to the Borg in revenge for them killing his mum. The orbs cause them to have existential fan service and attack the prophets. Cisco, being outside of time, feels sad that his son wants to kill everyone and travels back to a week after he left. Now he looks much older and dies in Jake's arms, saving the universe. Live long or prosper. Sorry, in a weird mood. Just want to check and make sure. No, that is not Stephen Clenard. That is Kier who posted that. You lost me at the beginning with do a Deep Space Nine spinoff, but then you got me back at the end. Like, you got me when you were like, and then Cisco should come back from the wormhole, but he should be super old and he should just die in Jake's arms. I was like, yeah, you know what? You got me. You got me. So sure. Fuck it. Also, it needs to be 10 episodes and there can't be any more plot than what you just said. They need to take that just the general summary that you put in your question, and they need to stretch it out for 10 episodes. 4 when it comes to especially the legacy shows in the current Star Trek generation. I think we need to say that this is the way. You take that much plot and then you just fucking stretch it. Sent Merc, hey Steve, on a late seating, you mentioned that you went to see Spider-Man 2 7 times in theaters. As a movie critic, it may pain you to hear that Spider-Man is my favorite movie. But since you are also obviously a fan of Raimi Spider-Man, maybe it won't pain you that much. I find the films vibrant, iconic, and just the kind of corny I want them to be. I find them light years better than the Amazing films and leagues better than the Home films, except No Way Home, which owes a heavy debt to, well, those movies. I admit 3 is bad, but not as bad as people say, and the Becoming Sandman scene is worth the ticket on its own. What do you love about these movies? Do you hold Maguire Spidey in the same iconic status as Reeves Superman? Some effects are dated, and we could really do without that one homophobic joke, but I still say these movies get Spider-Man better than anything else on screen. No, first of all, as a film critic or not, it doesn't bother me that Spider-Man is your favorite movie, because, I mean, it's a really terrific movie. It doesn't, it's not like I would shake my head and go, oh, no. Like, no, Spider-Man's terrific. I love Spider-Man. And I love Spider-Man 2, obviously. I went to see it in the theater 7 times. I've watched it, I don't even know how many times since then. It's one of my very favorite superhero movies ever made. And I like Spider-Man 3 too. Yeah, it's way overstuffed. It has too much going on. It has too many characters, too many villains. It's too long. It's a huge, awkward, ungainly mess of a film. But I bear it no ill will, and there are parts of it that I absolutely adore. I love the Sandman, the Becoming Sandman scene that you mentioned. That's so beautiful, so well done. I love douchebag Peter. I think Tobey Maguire does so good in those scenes, the dancing scenes and stuff. Everybody makes fun of those, but like, they're supposed to be funny. He's supposed to be a jerk ass. You're not supposed to think he's awesome. Like, it's supposed to be cringe inducing. He's an asshole. The suit turns him into a douchebag. Like, that's the point. And I think it's hilarious, and it's done so well. And the scene where Peter forgives Sandman is beautiful. It's so beautiful. So there's a lot about Spider-Man 3 that I like. And I like all 3 of those movies. And what do I like about them? I like the things that you like about them. They are corny in just the right way. They have wonderful senses of humor, wonderful personalities. They are quirky and idiosyncratic in the way that Sam Raimi's other films are. They have their own aesthetics and their own voices. I love the way the characters talk. I love the way a lot of the dialogue channels like classic 1960s and 70s comic dialogue. I love obviously Spider-Man 2 has the train scene, which is the greatest single scene in any superhero movie, I think, still to this day. Have that wonderful, beautiful speech that Aunt May gives to Peter when she's out in the yard packing up her stuff and preparing to move, that just breaks my heart and just moves me to tears every time I watch it. and it has great takes on some classic Spider-Man villains, all played by wonderful actors that are just going for it. So it's the first two especially are great. The third one is better than its reputation suggests, even though it has a lot of problems. And I love those movies. I love the Sam Raimi Spider-Man movies. And yes, I think I wouldn't say Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is quite at the same level for me as Christopher Reeve's Superman, but that's only because Christopher Reeve's Superman is up there in a complete class by himself. Like, I do think Tobey Maguire is to Spider-Man as Christopher Reeve is to Superman. And I think Tobey Maguire's Spider-Man is perfect. And as much as I love Tom Holland and what he's doing with Spidey now, and as much as I appreciate Andrew Garfield and what he did in his movies, neither one of them even comes close to Tobey Maguire. Like, Tobey Maguire owns that character for me and probably always will. If I see another actor portray a live action Spider-Man in my lifetime that does as good a job or better than Tobey Maguire, I will consider myself extremely lucky, because I think he just nails it. He's perfect as Peter and as Spider-Man. So there you go. I love the Raimi Spider-Man movies. Mac, who moved months ago but is still developing his new rhythms, which involve early submissions? No, never. Greetings, Steve. I'm sorry to you and the community I've not been around. Hope to be more present. So with my absence, I'll hope you'll allow me 2 questions. The second, if only one. What would you have given to be in the House chamber when MTG banged the gavel calling for order and the entire Dem caucus just broke out in laughter? And second, how have you been doing, my friend? Well, I would give my firstborn child. I would give my firstborn child to have been in the chamber when that happened. And whenever that firstborn child arrives, and I am transported back in time to be able to experience that, I will hand them over right away. And how have I been doing? I've been doing very well. Thank you very much for asking. I hope the move went well. I hope everything is good and you're settling in to the new place. And it's nice to see you. It's always nice to see you. I have missed you the last few months, but it's nice to see you back around, and hopefully you'll be back around some more in the coming days. But things have been going very well. Life in general has been good. Weather around here for the most part has been good. The videos have been going well. So knock on wood, things are going very well. General Contact Unit Problem Child. So recently, the YouTube right lost their minds because Netflix put out a show where Cleopatra is played by a black woman. I agree she probably didn't look like a black woman, but I think she, Greek Egyptian, also didn't look like Liz Taylor or any of the other white women who've played her. So why not give a black woman a go at the role? That said, something I wonder is, do you think part of the reason that Netflix decided to commission the show is they knew those kinds of people would complain about it and inadvertently give it free publicity? Even if the people who actually made the show sincerely just want more people of color representation, I don't think it's crazy to imagine the capitalists above them were cynically courting controversy somewhat. I have the same suspicion about Mars every time they alter M&M mascots to make them slightly less gendered and the right go insane. To clarify, I still think the outrage itself is shitty, but I do wonder if companies intentionally court it sometimes. I don't think that's an outrageous assumption. It wouldn't surprise me if there are people higher up on the food chain who, saw the casting and said, maybe if there were multiple actors up for the role and one of them was a black woman to play Cleopatra, I'm sure there are people who are like, ooh, you know what? It might make a lot more noise if we cast her instead of her. Like, I'm sure that happens. I mean, one would like to think that they just allow the filmmakers to cast whoever they think would be the right actor for the role that would help to realize their vision for the project. But I mean, let's not be naive. There are times when that just flat out doesn't happen. But yeah, so I mean, I don't know that for a fact. And you're not saying you know it for a fact either. You're just saying that it strikes you as a strong possibility. And I think you're probably right. I do think there are probably cases where that happens. where people look at, oh, this is going to be controversial. People are going to be tweeting about it. It's going to be very active on social media. We can capitalize on that. Like, I'm sure there are people who think that. Yeah, it would surprise me if there aren't. Isaiah Taylor. So, Steve, like me, you like movies. Here's a question. What movie would you like to reenact in real life, i.e. like visiting filming locations such as the Vasquez Rocks, where a lot of Star Trek stuff is filmed at? For me, it's the 1996 movie Twister. In the movie, they film in the real-life town of Waukita, Oklahoma. The town has a museum dedicated to the film, along with some of the trucks and the Dorothy sensor machines from the movie. I can imagine myself flying to Oklahoma City and renting a car from the 1990s and making the 2.5-hour ride to Waukita to live out the movie. And yes, playing music from the movie, like Tori Amos's Tallulah and Stevie Nicks. Hell, maybe I hope to see a real tornado or some severe weather while I'm there. And yeah, I'm also going to put up fake weather instruments on top of the car. Thoughts? R.I.P. Tina Turner. And yes, R.I.P. Tina Turner, who passed away a few days ago. Your road trip sounds like a lot of fun. If you ever get to do that, I hope you have a great time. If I were going to reenact a scene from a movie, I think I would like to reenact the scene from The Godfather where Sonny beats the fucking shit out of his sister's husband. What's his name? Carlo, where Sonny beats the shit out of Carlo. I, of course, would play Sonny. As for who would play Carlo, there are so many possibilities. And I would just warn whoever that is, I'm going to work a little stiff for this one, just so you know. I want it to look good. Yeah. The Sonny beats the shit out of Carlo scene. Michael Ridra, how worried are you about DeSantis's presidential bid? I feel like most people are treating him as a big joke, but 2016 made me eternally wary of evil politicians who are not taken seriously enough. He seems to have, unfortunately, accomplished a lot in Florida in his apparent bid to turn it into the most fascist U.S. state. And I fear for so many people who live there, especially anyone who isn't a straight cis white adult. The idea of him as president is perhaps even more frightening to me than the idea of Trump as president. Should I be worried? I heard his announcement on Twitter was a big embarrassment for him, but just embarrassment isn't enough for me. What are your thoughts on DeSantis and the threat he presents? Well, I mean, of course, the prospect of him being president is terrifying. Like, it's flat out terrifying. It won't probably start keeping me up at night unless I feel like he's actually getting close to it. Like, if he gets the Republican nomination and he's polling well, then I'll start to get worried. But, right now I'm not losing sleep over it. But, I mean, you're right to remind us of the specter of Trump. Everybody thought Trump was a joke, and then he won the fucking thing in 2016. So, if DeSantis does get the nomination and he is looking competitive with Biden, yes, of course I'm going to worry about it, because DeSantis as president would be a fucking disaster. And I think he would be horrible for the country in general and for marginalized people, and particularly LGBTQ people, and most particularly trans people. It would be a nightmare. And I really hope it doesn't happen. But yeah, I think you're completely reasonable to be concerned about it. I will probably be a little concerned about it, at least in the back of my head, until we get to a point where it's no longer a possibility, until he drops out of the race or loses the primary or whatever. I think it's completely reasonable to have feelings like that. Shazy's heart in conflict with itself. Good evening, Steve. I'm sort of at a moral crossroad. Given the state of our planet right now, I feel that it would be irresponsible to want to pursue the traditional consumerist American dream lifestyle, owning a single-family home in the suburbs, driving a car regularly, traveling by plane for vacation, a lot of meat, producing offspring, etc. I like my current situation, materially speaking, but occasionally pine for a partner's love and affection. However, I have this nagging fear that accepting a partner into my life would force me to compromise on maintaining a simple living, non-materialistic lifestyle. Do you have any advice? By the way, I apologize that my question last Ask Away was insensitive. It is absolutely not my intention to make women's lives or anyone else's any harder than they already are, except for the lives of right-wing shitheads. Thank you. Well, look, you can find a partner who shares your values and who is similarly committed to living the way you want to live, and not pursuing the traditional consumerist American dream. Like, you can find another person to be your partner who will share that with you and have the same goals. And if you are dating someone and it turns out they aren't like that, and being with them is pulling you away from the way you want to live, and it's that important to you, and you want to get back to the simple living approach, breakups are a thing. If that's your priority and that's more important to you than maintaining the relationship, then yeah. And I'm not saying it's going to be this easy. If you've formed like a strong emotional attachment to the other person, if you love them and it will hurt to be without them, you have a choice to make. You can either be with them and sacrifice your mode of living, and make a moral compromise in your mind, or you can not make the moral compromise and you can break up with the person that you're with and go through the grief and the pain of breaking up with them, but maintain your standard of living in a way that you can live with, that you can be happy with. Not an easy choice, but a choice that you have the power to make if you're ever in that situation. But hopefully you will be able to find a partner who you can live with and be with and share your life with, and love and be loved by, who will share your values and allow you to continue to live in the way that you are comfortable living. And good luck with that. Thomas James Wright, aka Blackbody Economics. Two things. First, these past few weeks have been insane. We took Lavender from Utah to Colorado State's vet hospital for heart surgery. I'm happy to report that it went well. The stent was placed perfectly, and Lavi is now in recovery and doing great. I just wanted to give a quick shout out to CSU's vet school. It was an unparalleled veterinary experience. They actually care about you and your furry family member. I also wanted to give you some super god sex level props for making the decision to not give in to the ad farm seduction. For me personally, it is such a turnoff when a respected content creator decides to turn 5 to 10 minutes of their video into an advertisement. I'm curious to know your views / opinions on the matter. Take care and rock the fuck on. Well, first of all, I'm so glad to hear that things are going better with Lavender. I'm glad that surgery went well and that Lav is recovering well. That is fantastic. I'm so happy to hear that. As for the ads thing, it doesn't really bother me when other YouTubers have ads in their videos. Like, it's not something that I worry about or that puts me off. I mean, I do kind of prefer it if they either put the ads right at the very end, or if they do need to put them in the middle, if they make a very clean line of demarcation, like kind of like how Some More News does it, where they will like Cody will actually throw to an ad like it's a TV show with a commercial. They'll be like, time for some ads, we'll be right back, and then they do some ads and then they come back to the show, and it's like a clean ad break. Doing it that way I think is better than trying to sort of work it in, to do like a more integrated ad read. That sometimes feels a little forced and a little like, ooh, not quite on the up and up. But no, in general, it doesn't bother me. I understand it's an economic reality for people. Is if you make your living off your YouTube channel and you have the opportunity to earn extra income through having ads in your videos, I don't begrudge people that. It's a job as much as it is anything else. And honestly, the main reason why I don't do it is that my videos don't really get enough views to make it worth doing. I mean, like if my videos got reliable views in the 6 figures instead of the 5 figures like they typically do, and I was approached by a reputable advertiser who, made me an offer that would put significantly more money in my pocket, I would do it. I would, unless their terms were so inflexible that I felt like I couldn't do it without seriously sacrificing the quality of the video. But if I could do something kind of like they do in Some More News, where I could just structure the video where I get to a certain point and then I take an ad break, and I do an ad read where I try to make it as entertaining as possible, while fulfilling the requirements of the the commission to do the ad, and then go back to the show. Like, I would not be opposed to doing something like that if I thought it would be worth my while financially. But if I did it now, given the number of views that my videos typically get, I think like it would be disruptive to the video, and it wouldn't be worth it to me financially to do that, So if I ever start getting, consistent views in the 100,000s, or the hundreds of thousands, and putting an ad in the video would like boost my revenue to a significant degree, I mean, of course it would be foolish not to do that. But as things stand right now, at the level that I'm currently sitting at, they're just, it just doesn't make sense to me to do that. There's the money that I stand to make is not that much more than what I'm currently making. It doesn't seem worth it. Joe McClory, maybe I have been too harsh on cops. Before he passed, Michael Brooks used to say, be ruthless with systems and kind to individuals. I sometimes think of elements of my job where I have to struggle to be a good part of a bad system. I understand how people go into a job with the best of intentions only to be victims themselves of the bad apple factory that is the system of policing. I wonder if it is enough to be the good in a bad system, or if a well-paid state job is the reason and everything else is a rationalization. I get how victims and potential victims of systems find comfort in confronting the cogs of the machines, but for myself, I feel it is better to build something else, or at the very least do what can be done to reduce the harm. I know, not a question. I guess I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on my musing and what you think might be the same or different in being part of a broken system, be it a cop, a prison guard, a public school teacher, or a CNA to Nurse Ratched. I mean, I think my point of view is very similar to yours. And it kind of ties back in with the question from earlier about, people who live under authoritarian regimes and, they should just rise up. Like, it's not always that simple. We live in a reality where you have to work in order to eat. Unfortunately, like, I don't think it should be that way. It doesn't have to be that way, but that's the way it is. If you don't have a job, if you're not earning income, if you don't have a source of money coming in regularly that you can use to buy your food and pay your bills and put clothes on your back and take care of your kids or whatever other responsibilities you have, then you don't do those things. So if you manage to get yourself a good job, you have 1,000 different reasons to want to keep that job. And unless it is making moral impositions on you that are so extreme you just can't live with yourself, or it's making you so miserable that you just can't stand it, most of the time it's a good idea to hold on to the job just because of the consequences of not having it, So I don't think anybody, and I would even extend this to cops, like an individual cop who follows the law and does not abuse their authority and does not use the fact that they are a cop to harass people or mistreat people or throw their weight around, or is not corrupt and does not engage in, unjustified uses of force or unjustified detainment of people, and is as good of a cop and as good of a public servant as you can be in the current system. I don't have any ill will toward that person. Doesn't change my feelings about the system. Like, I still think policing in this country needs to be radically changed, but it doesn't necessarily mean I consider every single cop an enemy. Especially if I happen to know an individual who is doing the best they can, doesn't mean I automatically trust all cops or I automatically give all cops the benefit of the doubt without knowing them, because I do know what I know about the system and because the abuses and the corruption is so pervasive. But, I don't discount the possibility that there are, if not good cops, at least cops that are being as good as they possibly can be and are trying their best within a terrible system. And the same is true for nurses and for prison guards. And I know it's true for school teachers because I know school teachers who are some of the most wonderful, admirable people I have ever known who are trying their very best. Some of them in school systems that are absolutely fucking horrible, that don't support students, that don't support teachers, that don't seem to support parents unless those parents are right-wing lunatics who are complaining about books in the library and what bathrooms the kids are using and who's playing on what sports team and, all that fucking bullshit. And there are teachers who are trying their best and are doing whatever they can to be a good part of a bad system, And with public education, it's not an inherently bad system. It's a system that has been ruthlessly sabotaged from outside and inside by right-wingers for decades. The problems with, say, policing are a lot more long-lasting and deeply ingrained in the system itself, whereas public education, it's more a series of acts of intentional sabotage, but same sort of thing. Good people trying to work within a bad system. So, no, I don't judge individuals who are doing their best within a bad system because it's tough out there. People need to do what they need to do to survive. And it's not always easy to do the morally perfect thing or the morally righteous thing, and I understand that people have responsibilities and have needs and need to do what they have to do. And as long as they are not, crossing moral lines in terms of like, they're not out there fucking people over and mistreating people and, actively doing harm to others for the most part, I think, what, it's a tough world. It wasn't my idea to make the world this way. It wasn't your idea to make the world this way. We would fix it if we could, but it is what it is for the moment. And we have to do what we have to do to get by, So I more often than not will not judge people just because they have a job in a shitty system, Kara Hughes. Hi, Steve. Picard and Discovery have ended, and we now have Strange New Worlds and possibly Lower Decks. Do you think that we have a surfeit of Trek, or do you think that with the right writers, Trek could be as good again or better? Are we talking about the law of diminishing returns, where Paramount are pumping out Trek series after Trek series with varying responses? Well, I mean, so far, I think we're in pretty good shape. I didn't really enjoy the Picard series. I haven't really enjoyed Lower Decks, but I have loved Strange New Worlds. I have mostly liked Discovery a great deal, and I loved Prodigy. So, I mean, I feel like the average is pretty high. And plus, I also liked the Kelvin timeline movies, so we'll throw those in there too. I mean, even though they're not, strictly speaking, a part of the Paramount Plus, portion of the franchise. But no, so and the way that the new shows are being produced and released, where the seasons are shorter than was typically true of the old broadcast shows, a season of TNG or Deep Space Nine or Voyager or Enterprise was usually between 24 and 26 episodes, and seasons of the streaming shows have been between 10 and 15 episodes, and it seems like they've settled on 10 episodes now as the typical length of a season. So it's not like there's new episodes of 3 or 4 different Star Trek shows being released every week. They've been pretty good at releasing episodes of one series at a time. So they'll release the new season of Strange New Worlds, and then when all of those episodes are out, they'll release the new episodes of Lower Decks or Prodigy or whatever, so they're doling them out in kind of a rationed sort of way. So you're not just getting inundated with it. It's not like, oh, it's Thursday, there's a new episode of Picard and Strange New Worlds and Discovery and Prodigy. Like it hasn't. So it doesn't really feel like overload to me, at least not yet. And I haven't really seen a law of diminishing returns because, Strange New Worlds and Prodigy are, I think, the two newest shows. And they're also the two best shows of the new batch. So I don't think I don't think we've gotten to that point yet. And I think the way they're handling the production schedule and the release schedule of the new shows, it will hopefully forestall that for a while. So no, I don't think we have reached Star Trek overload quite yet, and hopefully we won't reach it for a while. All Mod Cons, aka Cindy, please forgive me for this disjointed question. Not sure how to word it. Several months ago, you did a MacGyver video in which there was a map showing how bad guys / white supremacists were going to take over the US. I can't recall all the details, but it showed infiltration of government agencies, judges, schools, prison system, etc. It was quite fascinating in a sinister and disturbing way. Do you think the show's writers knew something, or they were just guessing and happened to be right? It kind of freaked me out, LOL. I mean, they knew something, but it's more like they knew that white supremacist groups have been trying to do something like that for a very long time. I mean, let's not forget, it was in the 70s when David Duke first came to national prominence and tried to rebrand the KKK, not as a white supremacist terrorist group, but just as a special interest group. Just a lobbying group that advocates for the rights of white people. Like, that's all. If black people can have groups lobbying for their rights and, Hispanic people can have groups lobbying for their rights, well, why can't white people have a group representing their interests? Why, that's all we want to do. And he stopped appearing in public in the robes and the hoods, and he started wearing a suit and tie and, and tried to legitimize it. So that idea of white supremacist groups kind of taking the indirect approach and not coming out, in a Klan robe and a Confederate flag and throwing the N-word around and, threatening to kill all the Jews, while screaming into a microphone during a rally, and saying, let's be a little more quiet about this. Let's be behind the scenes. Let's, keep the most toxic stuff just amongst ourselves. And when we're out there among the public, we'll sound more like typical Republicans, and we'll try to get elected to offices, and we'll try to get jobs in, various different industries and agencies. And we'll sort of do it that way. Like, that's been going on for a very long time. And even back when the Klan was more overtly racist, even in the South in the 40s and 50s and 60s, before the modern civil rights movement kind of took over and forced them back into the shadows for a while, there were members of the Klan who were teachers and judges and members of the police department and all of that. Like, that has happened before. It's just that back then they weren't as subtle about it. I think that they would maybe deny that they were in the Klan, but it was sort of with a wink and a nod. Like, everybody kind of knew it, even though it wasn't officially acknowledged. So no, I mean, unfortunately, it's not that new of a thing. And it's not really a secret to anyone who pays attention that white supremacist groups have been trying to do that and have wanted to do that. And with varying degrees of success, have been doing that for a very long time. So, it kind of should freak you out, because it's they weren't guessing and they weren't predicting anything. They were writing about things that were happening and that people knew were happening and that had happened and that people knew had happened, because it has been a part of how white supremacist groups, the Klan, neo-Nazi groups have operated for a very long time. Russell, hey Steve, how have you been? Not that you asked, LOL, but me, I've been super busy these last few weeks between work and hanging out with my granddaughter, who is such a major joy in my life. Anyways, I'm behind in video watching. I did watch your recent videos about trans children and their parents, and good for you. Tell these, forgive me for swearing, assholes to mind their own fucking business. Well, gosh, Russell, you know how offended I am by profanity, but I guess I'll forgive you just this one time. I do need to catch up on your Star Trek videos, though I saw a few pop in. I will catch up to those when I have the time. Also, I wasn't ignoring you. I will send you that DM on Patreon. Well, on your own time, whenever. So on to today's quick question, since once again, I am doing this under the wire. Dun, dun, dun. Voyager. You knew this was coming. How exactly did that show ruin the Borg? I mean, all the eliminates were there, all the elements, I guess that is, all the elements were there in TNG, from them choosing Picard to be their voice, to the Borg Queen in First Contact, and I would even go so far as Hugh being liberated from the Borg. So again, my question stands. See you soon. It just mostly comes down to overexposure. Voyager just used the Borg so often that they really had no choice but to water them down and to weaken them and to make them less threatening, because every time you show a supposedly all-powerful, unstoppable villain in a story where it ends with the good guys either defeating that villain or at the very least getting away from that villain, you know, it's going to weaken them. And with a villain like the Borg, where a huge amount of their appeal lies in that supposed invincibility and in the fact that they are just so remote and so different and so unreachable by the typical methods of communication and defense and whatnot that Star Trek characters use. The more you have to water that down and change that, the less compelling they become, you know, like it's just as simple as that. And I mean, it doesn't help that most of, like I said earlier, most of the Borg centered Voyager episodes to me are not that great. Even if they had been good episodes, it's, you know, like Clubber Lang seems like a badass in Rocky 3. He beats the shit out of Rocky in their first fight. And you think, oh my God, Clubber Lang, he's a fucking badass, right? And then Rocky beats him in their rematch in the last fight in the big climactic battle of the movie. And Clubber still looks tough, still looks like a badass, but Rocky just outsmarts him and beats him. And you think, okay, Rocky beat him. Good for Rocky. And then we never see Clubber again. So you still think of Clubber Lang as a badass, even though he lost, because it's like, well, Rocky beat him that one time and Rocky outsmarted him. Imagine if the next 5 Rocky movies had been Rocky beating Clubber Lang. Well, by about the second one of those, you would start to think, you know, maybe Clubber isn't such a badass, because Rocky just keeps beating him. You know, it's the same sort of thing. You know, the crew of Voyager encounters the Borg, defeats the Borg, or at the very least, the Borg fail to destroy or assimilate Voyager time and time again. The Borg fail repeatedly. So it sure starts to seem like, oh shit, the invincible enemy isn't invincible anymore. You know, they're just another alien that the crew runs into from time to time. You know, they're basically no different than the Kazon. They're like, oh, they're bad guys, but don't worry, they're nothing to worry about. You know, that's what ruined the Borg and Voyager for me. Just the overuse and the weakening of them until eventually they just felt like they're just another bad guy alien race. You know, the Voyager will be able to handle them, no problem. You know, nothing scary about them. And finally, John Burns, hydrate before you dihydrate. Do you think that either NATO or Russia want the war in Ukraine to expand beyond Russian-Ukrainian borders? No. I mean, I certainly don't think NATO wants that, and I don't think Russia wants, or at least I don't think Putin wants that, because he's having enough trouble with the war within the borders of Ukraine. Like, why would he want to expand it out? I mean, now, if Putin won the war, or if he still wins the war at some point and is able to dominate Ukraine and solidify his power there, do I think he would maybe consider waging another war of conquest at some point in the future? I mean, yeah, probably. because that just seems like that's kind of his jam. But right now, with the war in Ukraine still ongoing, do I think he wants to expand it? Not really. I don't see why he would, given how poorly it's gone for him so far. And I certainly don't think NATO would want to, no. But then again, you're talking to me, and I am by no means a master strategist when it comes to geopolitical conflict. So, take it with a grain of salt. All right, that is the last of the patron and member questions. I will turn my full attention to the live chat momentarily, but first, it's time to premiere another Stuffy and Friends short. So all you Stuffy fans, get ready. I'm going to show you this brand new Stuffy and Friends short. It's a YouTube short. It is about a minute long. It will go up tomorrow as a standalone YouTube short on my channel in square format, as all my Stuffy YouTube shorts are. But you get to see it in full frame right here tonight on the live stream. So please do take a minute and enjoy this brand new Stuffy and Friends short. You know what bugs me?
You're looking for just one answer?
We know the solutions already to a bunch of our most serious social problems. Homelessness, give people houses. Hunger, give people food. Poverty, give people money. Gun violence, get rid of the guns. So why haven't we fixed any of these problems yet?
Perhaps because while the solutions are obvious, actually implementing them would be an extremely complex problem in itself.
Right, but we're not even trying. I thought this was the greatest country on earth. We went to the moon. We won World War II. We even ended slavery up to a point. What happened to that good old American can-do spirit?
It's been strangled for decades by people who profit from those problems you mentioned and don't want them solved.
That's right. Ta-da! What'd you think of that one, Stuffy?
I thought it was pretty good.
Okay, cool. Stuffy's opinion. Stuffy likes it. Anyway, let's turn now to the live chat and see what everybody wants to talk about. Here we go. Susan Wendell has a good point. NATO would prefer to ignore the war, but they can't. Yeah. Well, Archer, if you want to ask your question now, you can go ahead. I would be happy. I would be happy to answer it. And you don't have to use an @ mention if you don't want. I can just, I can just look for it. Kane20C says, is it okay to wear your baseball cap backwards while doing manual labor, such as doing mechanics in a vehicle or something else where the bill gets in the way? Yeah, I guess. Fine. Sure. But don't give me too many more excuses. Okay. And as soon as you're done, like as soon as you're not having to get close to the engine to check it or underneath the car or whatever, like as soon as you are done, you turn that shit back around. You hear me? Super chat from 255 AD. Even good cops violently endorse unjust hierarchy. Yeah. I mean, like I said, it's a bad system, but I said what I said about people who try to do their best within a terrible system. And there are certainly a lot of quote unquote good cops who do bad things or who actively enable bad things happening, so yeah, I mean, I'm not going to argue with you too strenuously on that. Archer, your question was a little long. Okay, well, if you can shorten it up, I would be happy to answer it for you. 2-5 AD says, if Kess had stayed on the show, should they have tried to deal with her growing old and dying in the later seasons, or just find some sci-fi reason to extend her life? I think showing her growing old would have been interesting. It would have been, I think that would have been the more artistic choice, given that they wrote that into her character and said, hey, she only lives 9 years and she's 2 when she joins the show. So, I mean, it's like you kind of have a perfect natural endpoint for her when you get to year 7. I mean, and they could have handled the aging in different ways. There's no reason why they do eventually show Kes in, you know, a later stage of her life where she does have, it's Jennifer Lien wearing old age makeup and she does look like a, you know, a senior human. But I mean, there's no reason why they would have had to do that if she had stayed in the show. They could have just said, well, you know, they live 9 years, but they don't age the same way that humans do. So she'll still look relatively young, even though she'll, you know, be close to death. And that's just the way it works with her species. They could have done that. And I think having Kes reach the end of her natural life cycle near the end of Voyager's run could have been a very poignant thing, you know? So, I mean, yeah, I think they could have done that. Philip, I did not see the Strange New World scene they released as a preview today. I saw that it was out. I saw that it was up on YouTube, but I did not have a chance to watch it. I will probably watch it as soon as this live stream is over. David Colby says, I'm learning how to play violin, but then it turns out violins are slightly too small, so I got a viola, which is just a violin, but 20% bigger. Well, good luck. Congratulations. That's really cool. It's always cool when somebody's learning to play a musical instrument, because I can't do it. Best of luck to you. Here's a super chat from Stephen G. Clenard regarding baseball hats. Can we also agree that unless you are Minnie Pearl, and you are not, take the fucking price tag and stickers off immediately after purchasing the hat? I agree. I can get behind that. I mean, I always do that. I don't leave the tags on things when I wear them. Yes, I would agree with that. Take the stickers off. I don't mean to sound too much like a grumpy old man and be like, these kids need to pull their goddamn pants up. But like, yeah, to me, it looks a little goofy when you're walking around with a hat and you still got like the price tags and stickers on it. Like, take that shit off. Pedro Noguera says, you always mention Bruce Springsteen. Although I obviously know of him, I'm not familiar with his career. Would you sing something? You are good at it. Or at least tell you what you love about. Oh my God. Okay. Okay, first of all, let me answer Michael Hanline's question. Strange New Worlds. If Strange New Worlds has to have a crossover, what other Trek show besides Lower Decks would you prefer it be? Well, I mean, I guess they've already kind of done a Discovery crossover because it's like a spinoff of Discovery. So we saw Captain Pike in the second season. So I can't really say Discovery because we've already got that. Sort of. I mean, I get what's left. Prodigy. You know, if they can come up with a way to have a crossover, do a time travel story where, you know, the proto star crosses paths with Captain Pike's Enterprise, I guess I'd be down with that. I mean, it's my 2 favorite shows. So if somebody comes up with an actual good enough story to do that, I mean, I guess that might be cool. Oh, Gedrin, so you severely disapprove of Luke Danes on Gilmore Girls. No, I don't. I love Luke, but it does kind of break my heart every time I see him with his cap turned around like that. No, I love Luke. Luke's great. Luke's a fantastic character. And I love Gilmore Girls. Gilmore Girls was a great show. So no, you know what? Luke gets special dispensation. He does. I just, you know. Anyway, so okay. I will sing a little Bruce Springsteen for you. Okay? A Kirok, no, I sing. I don't know if I would call it proper singing. I sing. So I will sing a little. I love Bruce Springsteen, and I love the slow acoustic versions of Thunder Road. Right, Bruce has done a couple of these on live albums, and also actually Sarah Watkins does an absolutely gorgeous slow acoustic cover of Thunder Road. So in that style, and then the style of Bruce when he does his melancholy piano versions of Thunder Road, I will sing a bit of Thunder Road. Okay, a cappella. Apologies in advance if this is terrible. Okay. Screen door slams. Mary's dress waves. Like a vision, she dances across the porch as the radio plays. Roy Orbison singing for the lonely. Hey, that's me, and I want you only. Don't turn me home again. I just can't face myself alone again. Don't you run back inside, darling, you know just what I'm here for. So you say that you're thinking that maybe we ain't that young anymore. Show a little faith, there's magic in the night. You ain't a beauty, but hey, you're alright. Oh, and that's alright with me. You can hide neath your covers and study your pain. Leave crosses for your lovers, throw roses in the rain. Waste your summer praying in vain for a savior to rise from these streets. Well, I'm no hero, that's understood. All the redemption I can offer, girl, is beneath this dirty hood. With a chance to make it good somehow. Hey, what else can we do now? But except roll down the windows and let the wind blow back your hair. Well, the night's busted open and these 2 lanes will take us anywhere. We've got one last chance to make it real, to trade in these wings on some wheels. Climbing back, heaven's waiting down on the track. Oh, come take my hand. We're riding out tonight to case the promised land. Oh, Thunder Road, oh, Thunder Road, oh, Thunder Road, lying out there like a killer in the sun. I know it's late, but we can make it if we run. Oh, Thunder Road, sit tight. Take hold, Thunder Road. That's all I'm doing. And the only reason I did that much is because Bruce takes so goddamn long to get to the hook in that song. But anyway, Thunder Road. I saw CMAX said Streets of Philadelphia. Streets of Philadelphia is also a fucking gorgeous song. But yeah, there we go. Thunder Road. David Colby says Strange New Worlds should have a crossover where it's good. We all know how you feel about Strange New Worlds, okay? And Some Random Geek, Born in the USA is a terrific song. A little hard to do a cappella. Yeah, a little hard to do a cappella. Although Bruce does do on the Live in New York double album from 2000, he does an acoustic version of it, like a really bluesy, stripped down acoustic version of it that sounds completely different than the album version, which is really good. But also like it still has like a guitar accompaniment. It will be really hard, I think, to do acoustic and do it any kind of justice. Pedro, sorry for asking you to sing, Steve. You have a beautiful voice. Thanks. Well, I'm glad you think so. Oasis with a super chat. Who is your favorite uber famous person guest star spot on all of Star Trek, and why is it Iggy Pop? Unless it's Stacey Abrams. Iggy Pop as a Vorta was good. Mick Fleetwood as one of the fish people on TNG was funny because you only know that was Mick Fleetwood. Like if you know, because he doesn't have any lines and you can't even tell it's him because the makeup is covering his entire head. That's a funny little piece of trivia. Stacey Abrams might be it just because it's so unexpected and like it's so perfect and it's so pointedly political. You know what I mean? It's like the creators of the show going, yeah, that's right. Stacey Abrams is the president of Earth. Fuck you. So that might be my favorite. That might be my favorite because it came and it was so out of left field. Like you watch that episode and at least for me, I watched that episode and I'm like, is that Stacey fucking Abrams? Oh, that's so cool. Let me see. Let me catch up on another one. Hugh O'Byrne, what song makes you cry? I mean, a really good acoustic version of Thunder Road comes pretty close. It's a beautiful song. Bruce's piano version of that, which is the version I was kind of sort of basing my rendition on. Like, it's just so fucking beautiful. That's a good one. Ben Folds has a song called The Luckiest that really works on me. Amy Mann has a song. Actually, I think it was a Till Tuesday song, but Amy Mann later did it as a solo song and an acoustic version with her, and it's a duet with her and Elvis Costello, I think. And it's called The Other End of the Telescope. That is, oh God, just fucking beautiful. 255 AD says, I don't get why you're so anti-backwards cap as a Gen X kid. Wasn't that your culture growing up? It wasn't my culture, buddy. My culture was baseball and Americana, and we wear it like this, the proper way. Oh, Kane 20C, deathmatch time, underappreciated Ensign edition, Harry Kim versus Travis Mayweather. Oh, it's tough. Harry. Poor Harry. I have to side with Harry. Nothing against Travis, but it's like, hasn't Harry been through enough? Although maybe it would be a mercy killing. Maybe we should let Harry die and stay dead this time. I don't know. I'd go with Harry though. Let me see. 285 AD says, last video you made, were you surprised there's so many people who still view having kids as a family lineage thing? I thought that attitude was more or less extinct. I mean, it doesn't surprise me that certain people think that way, but it is disappointing because it does feel like the nicest thing I can say about it is that it seems really old fashioned. And as you could tell if you saw my video from earlier today, like I don't have really any love for people who express that opinion. Like you are not owed grandchildren. Like just because you have kids, you have no right to be like, and one day they'll give me grandchildren. Like I'm sure if you want grandkids, that'd be great. And I can even understand like if you really want grandkids and then you don't have, and then your kids don't have kids and you don't get, I can understand. We're human beings. We have feelings. I understand being disappointed. Like I get that, but not to the point that you hold it against your kids or that you actually say things to them. You put that on them and say, oh, I wish you would have given me grandchildren. You know what I mean? Or when are you going to give me grandchildren? Like that's fucked up and you shouldn't do that. So yeah, I mean, it disappoints me. I'll put it that way. It disappoints me that there are still people who have that idea, who have that attitude. But I suppose it doesn't surprise me because there are lots of people on the planet who have similarly shitty, backward ass, outdated ideas. Captain Nemo 563 says, hey Steve, do you plan to do more videos like the Starfleet lawyer? Thanks for the great content. Yes, I do. I have a concept for the next one. It will not be Starfleet lawyer. It won't be the same character, but it will be a similar idea of like a person who has a lesser seen job in Starfleet that you would think by implication has to exist, but we just don't see that person doing their job on the actual show. So I'm in the very early stages of writing it now. I don't really know when I will make it, but it's probably sometime in the next few months. That video will be out and I'm looking forward to it. And I hope people like it as much as they liked the Starfleet lawyer one. And I hope it's as good as the Starfleet lawyer one. Gordon Walker says, hi, Steve. Love your stuff. Just wanted to say hi from Glasgow. Well, thank you very much. Hi. Glad you could be here. Kirok 2011 with a member message says, hey, Steve, I wasn't ready and vice versa. And vice versa. I wasn't ready to be a granddad, but now she is here. I love her more than life itself, regardless of the situation. And all I want is what's best for her and my daughter. Well, see, that's the right attitude. I think that's the attitude you should have, right? Ideally, that's the attitude that everybody would have. You want what's best for your kids, not what you have some pre-existing notion of in your head, regardless of what they want or how their life has turned out, but you want what's best for them. You want them to be happy. Like, I think that's the attitude you would want to have as a parent. CM, yes, Harry stays at Ensign for 7 years, and then they had the gall to refer to him as senior staff. Yeah. Fuck him. Poor Harry. Joe McClory says, question, do you think a slow arc where the Borg became slowly more individual over time with factions of them even joining the Federation could have worked? Yeah. And that, I guess that would have been one way to write them out as villains, is to sort of show the slow but inevitable disillusion of them. I mean, that would have been one way to go about it. And I think it could have worked for sure. It definitely would have been a lot better than just have them keep showing up and getting their asses kicked over and over and over again while we're still supposed to pretend that they're formidable adversaries. Like that didn't work. So your idea, I think, has the potential to be better than that. And yeah, some random geek, exactly. Your children are not your property. Your children are their own people. When your children are too young to make their own decisions and take care of themselves, then they are your responsibility, not your property, your responsibility. You are supposed to look out for them and look after them and take care of them, not treat them like you own them, because you don't. You are just watching over them and guarding them until they are mature enough to, fly the nest, so to speak. So Random Geek, Starfleet HR is not the next one, but that is a possibility. That is something that I have on my list of possible upcoming entries in that series for sure. Carrie Hughes says, I got a lot of that from my father, especially when it was discovered that my medical condition precluded me being able to have kids. Yeah, see, that's just fucked up. Like, don't fucking put that on your kids. Like I said in the video that I put out today, like, just don't put that on your fucking kids. Like, if it really means that much to you to have grandkids and you're really that disappointed because your kids aren't going to have kids, like, please, at least just keep it to yourself. Don't put that on your kids. Bridget 108P, it's my birthday soon. Can I get a happy birthday from my favorite YouTuber? That means you, Steve. Oh, Bridget, thank you so much. Flattery will get you everywhere in this case. Happy birthday, Bridget. I hope you have a great birthday. And thank you for saying that I'm your favorite YouTuber. That means a lot. That means a lot to me. So hopefully my happy birthday, puts a smile on your face. Serrata says, by the way, I would love a video about how Starfleet morality and ethics have evolved throughout the years and decades, as have real life morality and ethics, and how the whole franchise did summarily. Yeah, I mean, I feel like I've touched on pieces of that over the years, but yeah, I think that's a subject well worth talking about. I'll see if I can figure something out about that. That's a good suggestion. David Colby says, what bugs me about Picard Season 3? The trope of take the old ship out of mothballs and fight with her despite her being outmatched and old is so cool, and they fucked it up. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I agree with you. There are other ways they could have gone about that. Less pandering, fan servicey ways. So Random Geek, yes, there is a hangout this Sunday. This Sunday being the last Sunday of the month, even though it is Memorial Day weekend. This Sunday will be the regular patron member hangout at noon Eastern on Sunday. So hopefully if you are a patron or a member, you can join us for that on Sunday. David Colby says, for that to work, the ship has to suck. It has to be an underdog story. It needs to not wallow in how cool the ship is and show it flying around like a space fighter in the Death Star. Yeah, I agree. Choose like a beat up old ship, or maybe the original Stargazer. Like, at least that would have a closer tie into to the Picard show itself, not just TNG, but to the Picard show itself, because we know, according to the canon, that these fucking people are supposedly so in love with and hold so sacred. According to the canon, we know that Picard's original Stargazer survived and was towed back to Starfleet and is presumably in that fucking fleet museum, right? I can't remember if we saw it or not, but presumably it's there, or at least it's somewhere, right? So and we had the new Stargazer that was Rios's ship in season 2. So there's like a lineage there established in Picard, not just TNG, that they could touch on, and since we haven't seen the original Stargazer but once way back in season 1 of TNG, it's not like it would be fan wank to be like, look, everybody, it's your favorite, the Enterprise D again, like they did. And also, the Enterprise D was fucking destroyed. So you wouldn't have to come up with this ridiculous horseshit of like, oh yeah, it's good as new. Geordi rebuilt it in his garage and he borrowed the bottom half from another ship and all the fucking shit that they came up with to justify it being there when it was obviously just a bunch of fucking horseshit. Have it be the original Stargazer. And you can build an old retro looking set that looks cool, and you can have Picard coming full circle because now he's back on his original ship. But it's overmatched and it hasn't been in service for decades and it's fucking old as it is. And it's like, talk about an underdog ship. There you go. But nope, we got to see the Enterprise D again. We got to have all the characters back on the old bridge so we can have a feel-good moment with all the old people back in their old places on the fucking Enterprise D. Fuck! Not a creative decision that I support. 255 AD says, how would you feel about one of the shows doing a time travel episode that shows the Borg's genesis, or should that remain mysterious? I mean, unless they have like a really good fucking story, I don't see the point of that. Like, unless you have like an absolutely brilliant story that ties in with the origin of the Borg, I feel like it's better just to not touch that. Because honestly, and I know I differ a lot from many of my fellow Trekkies in terms of, things that I find interesting in the franchise, but like, I don't give a shit where the Borg came from, how the Borg got started. I don't fucking care. Like, they're the Borg. There they are. I don't give a shit. I don't need to know where they come from. I don't need to know every fucking thing that happened in the however many thousands of years of Borg history that led up to Picard running across them for the first time. It's better to me if it is mysterious, if it is unsaid. David Colby, right? It does sound better, doesn't it? Like, if you have to do the fucking bring the old ship out of mothballs thing, at least that sounds better. Again, in my imagination, it's not an actual show, so it's not a fair comparison, but it certainly sounds better than what they did. Joe McClory says, now that Picard is done, is Voyager still your least favorite finished Trek show? No, I think Picard is my least favorite now. I mean, season 1 of Picard had a lot of potential and had some really interesting ideas. Too many interesting ideas, really, because it just threw a bunch of stuff out there and then didn't follow up on any of it. And, wound up building up to the death of Data, who had already died. So that kind of fell flat for me, even though the actual scene between Picard and Data I thought was really well written. But it's like the whole season's been building up to giving Data a death scene. Data's been dead for 15 years. Like this, it just felt like, oh, that's it. That's your big idea. Okay. So it was a very mixed bag. Season 1, season 2 was the worst season of a Star Trek show ever by far. And season 3 was a lot better than season 2 and maybe a little bit better than season 1, but was also a completely creatively bankrupt orgy of pandering fan service that ultimately went nowhere and meant nothing. So, yeah, I think I would say Picard is below Voyager on the pecking order now. Yeah. Kirak 2011 with another super chat says, Steve, all I was saying in my questions, many of the things that water down the Borg and Voyager were there in TNG. Also, we got species 8472. Yeah, we got actually, I talk about that in my review of Scorpion that I put up yesterday. We get species 8472 and they immediately neuter species 8472, like in the very first episode. They don't waste any time. At least the Borg had been around for a few years before they, got their legs cut off. Voyager introduces species 8472 and fucking cuts their legs off immediately. No, it's just like I said, it's the overexposure. It's not just the Borg Queen. It's not just, they chose Picard as a spokesperson. It's that they kept bringing them back and having the heroes overcome them again and again and again. And for a villain like the Borg, where again, for me, a lot of the appeal is how scary they are and how impossible to defeat they are, and how, in Q Who, the Enterprise only gets away because Q helps them get away. And in Best of Both Worlds, they only defeat the Borg in Best of Both Worlds because Captain Picard is able to push through Locutus's programming and give Data a back door that puts that one cube to sleep and inadvertently triggers a self-destruct mechanism. Like they win by the skin of their teeth after the Borg, that one Borg ship by itself has completely obliterated an entire fleet, right? They just barely win. And then in I, Borg, they don't confront the entire collective. Like they keep their distance from the only proper Borg cube in the entire episode, and they only interact with Hugh, and Hugh is an isolated Borg. So they kind of do like a side story that involves the Borg, but is not a confrontation with the Borg. And kind of the same thing in Descent, where it's a faction of the Borg that has been separated from the collective that they're meeting, not the Borg collective itself. So they kind of get away with it there too. And then First Contact, once again, you have the full-on confrontation, but it's a movie, and it's a good movie, and you could kind of think, okay, well, maybe this will be the last Borg story. Like they've gone big, they've taken it to the big screen. It's a big epic time travel story with the fate of the planet Earth in the balance, and they beat the Borg yet again. And, it's a more definitive defeat this time. Although, again, you could say, like, well, they only won because Data actually was only secretly, he was only pretending to turn heel, and actually he was on Picard's side the whole time, and blah, blah, blah. Like, you can kind of try to justify it that way. But, like, if they had left the Borg alone after First Contact, if they had said, okay, we did the Borg in the movie, it was great, we got away with it, it was a really good movie, and that's it. No more Borg stuff. You're not going to see the Borg on Voyager. You're not going to see the Borg anywhere else. Like we're going to leave the Borg alone. We're going to quit while we're ahead. Then that would have been fine. But they didn't quit while they were ahead. They kept going, and they had an opportunity to do the same thing in Voyager. Like I said in my review of Scorpion yesterday, they had an opportunity in the episode where they introduced 7 of 9. They could have said, let's just do, because it's Voyager and because they're in the Delta Quadrant, and we've already established that the Borg are from the Delta Quadrant, and if we don't at least do a big Borg story once, then all the fucking Trekkies are going to lose their shit because they're going to be like, why didn't you do the Borg? The Borg are in the Delta Quadrant. So they could just do one big Borg story and get it out of the way and write the Borg out, so they don't have to keep bringing them back and watering them down again and again and again. And they created the perfect instrument to do that with in Species 8472. Like I said in my review, why not have Voyager approaching Borg space, and they know that they're getting close to Borg territory, and they're scared to death because it's like, oh shit, we're going to be in the middle of Borg country. What are we going to do? Right? But they have no choice. They have to go through because they need to get through it to get home. And then when they get to Borg territory, there's no Borg. The Borg have all been destroyed. What could possibly wipe out the entire Borg collective? What could have done this? And it's Species 8472. And now they are not facing the Borg that they expected they were going to have to face. They have to face an even more powerful enemy that just wiped out the Borg, or virtually wiped out the Borg, if you want to still have a few Borg lying around somewhere so you can introduce 7 of 9 from then. They have an even more powerful enemy than the Borg that they have to face. And because they established that Species 8472 is from another dimension, they exist in fluidic space, which is like not in our universe, you could come up with a reason why they can send them back to that, and they can't come back very easily. Actually, someone in the comments of that video came up with a better idea than I had, which is just say that species 8472 can only exist in our universe for very short periods of time. Like it's painful or destructive to them to leave fluidic space, so they can't come out of it very often, and they just came out of it recently to fuck up the Borg because the Borg had gone to their universe and fucked with them. So they came over to our universe to fuck up the Borg, and Voyager gets kind of caught in the middle of the final, climax of that war as the Borg are being wiped out and has to deal with that. And then once the species 8472 returns to fluidic space, they can't just come back because they can't naturally exist in our universe. And then you could come up with reasons why they could come back here and there in the future if you want to do future episodes and have them as a recurring antagonist. But you also have a built-in reason why they're not going to be running into them all the time, and you can preserve them and make them something special. And they're a Voyager thing now. It's not a hand-me-down from TNG. It's an original Voyager thing. But they didn't do that. They just did the thing they did. So, yeah. Anyway, I'm about to wrap up the show, so I will scroll through here and look for some final questions. And then we'll call it a night. Matt E. Ice says, "Hey, Steve, love your content. You've spent more time thinking through Star Trek than most. If you had a chance to make any new content for the franchise, what would you want to see?" I've talked about this before, but I think at this point I would love to do a show that is literally a wagon train to the stars. I would do a show where every season is built around either a single ship or a convoy of ships that are transporting colonists to settle on a new colony off in a distant, uninhabited, largely unexplored solar system, like way off on the edge of space that is known to the Federation. And each season, the show would be about the various characters, both like the main characters on the ship who are part of the crew, who would be in the show every week and every season, and also characters that we would meet and then say goodbye to who are like colonists and stuff. And just adventures that they would have and stories that they would get involved in along the way. I would do something like that. I don't know. I don't think I would call it Star Trek Wagon Train to the Stars, but that would be the idea. 225 AD has a super chat that says, "Also, I think the legacy thing is a pretext on some level. Like, I think they drop it as soon as medical science advances to allow trans to have bio kids." Maybe. I mean, I guess whenever medical science advances to the point where people can still have biological kids post transition, then we'll see how serious they are about the legacy thing, won't we? But yeah, I mean, maybe that's a possibility for some. Kirak 2011 says, "But don't you agree that Hugh set up 7 of 9? In a way, yeah. I mean, Hugh established that drones can be separated from the collective. I mean, Hugh definitely is a precursor to 7 of 9. I agree. But like I said, 7 of 9 herself is not part of what I think ruined the Borg. It's the repetition, it's the overuse, the overexposure. David Colby says, "Want to know something annoying? Voyager, if you look at a map, could have gone back home through the Gamma Quadrant really easily, avoiding Borg space by running into the Dominion." I see. You go left, they fuck you. You go right, they fuck you. Either way, they're going to fuck you. Kara Hughes, like the interphasic species in the TNG episode 9. Yeah, kind of like that, where they had to create like a little pocket of our universe. So maybe something like that, or they can come into our universe, but they can't stay very long. Something like that. Okay, so I'm going to wrap things up, and I see Geek was posting links in the chat. Don't forget also charitylinks.page, which is also linked in the video description to help out some friends of ours who need a helping hand. We always appreciate that, and I encourage you to do that. Also, don't forget, if you, 255 AD, why was there no Star Trek watch thing last week? Dana had a pre-existing commitment, and I know we mentioned it on our Friday stream, but we didn't get a chance to mention it on the previous Wednesday show because she didn't know about it yet. But Dana's in a show, and she sometimes has had evening rehearsals, so she had to do that instead of our Star Trek show. But we are back as scheduled this coming Wednesday. So And we are going to miss, I think, a couple more in the next month, but we'll go over that on Wednesday. But this coming Wednesday show is going on as scheduled. But anyway, okay, so patreon.com/Steve Shives if you want to support this channel, or also click the join button to become a channel member. Those are both really excellent ways to become a supporter of this channel with an ongoing regular monthly contribution. It can be $1, $5, $10 a month, however much you think I'm worth, however much you can afford. If you are a member or a patron at any level, from $1 a month on up to however much you can afford and however much you pledge, one of the perks is you get to submit questions ahead of time for Ask Away. Those are the questions that I answer at the beginning of every Ask Away stream. Those are patron and member questions, and you submit those ahead of time. I post members only or patrons only posts on my patron and YouTube community page for members only. And you get a link to a forum where you can submit your question, and I answer those questions first thing every Ask Away. So if that sounds appealing to you, that's one of the benefits you get by becoming a patron or a member. And also, Geek mentioned it earlier, this Sunday we are doing our monthly live stream where it's me on the show with patrons and members. Again, that's open to all patrons and all members of all levels, although it is first come, first serve and limited seating. I usually end or close the meeting after there are a total of 13 of us in there, just so it doesn't become too chaotic. But usually there's room. There's usually a few seats left available after we get started if you want to come in and join us. And that's once a month. And the next one is this coming Sunday. So that's another perk for patrons and members. And also, don't forget, in addition to my YouTube stuff, I'm also on a couple of podcasts. They are a part of the Let Me Listen family of podcasts. I am on Late Seating with Jason Harding, the movie review podcast, where we take a look at classic films and see if they deserve whatever reputation they have, whether it's good or bad. And our new episode of Late Seating goes up this week. In fact, it may be up as we speak. I'm not sure if it is or not. I haven't checked, to be honest. But we are reviewing, last time we reviewed my birthday movie, which was Magnolia. This time we are reviewing the film that Jason has chosen for his birthday movie, which is Dragon Slayer. So check out our review of Dragon Slayer. And also, if you are a patron of the Let Me Listen podcasts, there is a video version of an extended video version of our Late Seating episodes that you can watch in addition to just listening to the podcast that everybody can listen to. So consider that. And again, not my Patreon, but the Let Me Listen Patreon. And also, I'm a co-star of the Ensign's Log podcast, which is the Star Trek themed comedy podcast that I do alongside Jason and also Dana, who was with us earlier before she had to go be at her graduation at the school where she teaches, where we play Star Trek characters. We play characters that are currently serving aboard the TNG era Enterprise, and we have our own stories that sort of take place alongside the events and goings on of Star Trek TNG. And we just finished our 5th season a couple weeks ago, and we are gearing up to begin our 6th season. I think we are planning to record the first episode of season 6, not this weekend, but next weekend. Yes, I believe that is the plan. So yeah, looking forward to that. And I believe that is it. Yes, Kara, Dragon Slayer. Sarada, do I prefer the join or the Patreon? It doesn't really make a difference. I mean, I think my split for both is about the same, and the benefits to members and patrons are as equal as I can make them. So it doesn't really make a difference to me. If it's more convenient for you to click the join button instead of going to patreon.com/Steve Shives and becoming a patron, then do that, you know. And let me see. Yeah, Archers basically said what I just said. It's the cut for me is pretty much the same. So whatever's easiest for you. And yeah, and so I think that's it. Yeah. Oh, and Serrata just joined at the 99-cent level. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. That's so cool. Black Body Economics says, thanks, Steve. You're worth more than I can admittedly afford, but I do what I can. Good stuff. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. And Kara says, it was great fun being here. I was great fun having you here. I hope you had a good time. All right, everybody. I'm calling it quits for this week. Thank you so much. I will see you on Sunday for the patron and member stream, and I'll see you next week for more videos. Thank you so much for your questions and your comments, and those of you who were generous with super chats and whatnot. And those of you who are patrons and members, thank you for your ongoing support. I appreciate it so much. And have a good night. Have a good weekend, everybody. Take care of yourselves. I'll see you.